So the Champions League is back, which means we get to come here to Anfield for the pre-match press conference ahead of Liverpool facing Atletico Madrid here tomorrow evening. And of course, with it being the Champions League press conference, it means we don't just get the opportunity to speak to Arne Slot, but also a player as well. So we have been hearing from the captain, Virgil van Dijk, as well. But before that, I want to start out with the important stuff from Arne Slot, the stuff that most people are interested in, and that is, of course, the team news that the manager has given us, and that is concerning the big team news concerning, of course, Alexander Isak. Now, he was left out of the squad to face Burnley at the weekend, with the manager saying he wanted to leave him behind to do some more training and just really build up that fitness, because of course he's missed pre-season while he was on strike at Newcastle United. But the big news is that he will be involved in the Liverpool squad to face Atletico Madrid tomorrow. Arne Slot said to us 100% he will be in the squad, but he's pretty sure that he won't play the 90 minutes. But of course that is not really a surprise, is it? You have to stay, of course, his fitness just not quite at the level necessarily to even start games at the moment, so no chance of a 90 minutes, but I'm expecting a small cameo here if the match situation allows for it, of course. So be interesting to see how much he's used in terms of course, can he do 45 minutes? Would you bring him on in the second half, or is it probably smarter to maybe use him for the final 15 or 20 minutes? And of course, if the match is finally poised, do you want to keep a fitter Hugo Ekitike on the pitch for a little longer? It's going to be interesting to see how the manager deals with that. But I think the good news and the big news is that Alexander Isak will at least get a chance to make his Liverpool debut tomorrow, because he will be on the bench to start with. Now, some other team news as well, which I think is good news for Liverpool. Bad news initially in that Curtis Jones is not going to make this. We didn't see him in open training earlier today, but the good news from the manager today is that the expectation is he will be back in training tomorrow, so that should put him in line to be back in the Liverpool squad to face Everton. So I think that's good news for Liverpool. He is so important as a member of his squad, and you can imagine on a busy week like this where Liverpool have got 3 games over the course of 7 days, that these are the kind of weeks where you want to use a Curtis Jones, aren't they, and make the most of that squad depth. So good news that he is going to be back fit, not involved tomorrow, but hopefully back for the Everton game. Now, of course, with Alexander Isak, he remains the big talking point in these press conferences with the manager. And it was interesting, there was a Swedish broadcaster who was here asking a question about Isak, no surprise on that front, and asked what his biggest challenge will be at Liverpool. And again, not really surprised to hear that the manager said his biggest challenge, the thing he wants to see Isak do as quickly as possible in a Liverpool shirt, is get himself up to full fitness. Now, in terms of the plan to do that, he said, of course, we've got to use him wisely at the moment. We've got to build him up in terms of his fitness. And he said the plan is initially to get him to the point where he can complete 90 minutes. And of course, we're nowhere near that at the moment with him yet to make his debut. And then he said the next stage after that is to be able to do 3 90s in a week. So to be able to feature in every game over the course of a week like this, where it's kind of Premier League, Champions League and Premier League, or sometimes midweek is a League Cup fixture. And then he said about the next step for Alexander Isak, which I thought was really interesting. He went back to speaking about PSG, a game he's talked about and a tie he's talked about and an opponent he's talked about so much since, and talking about how impressed he was with the way that they pressed from the front last season. You know, spoke about Ousmane Dembele, who of course led the line for PSG so brilliantly last season. And it wasn't just his brilliance with the ball at his feet, his ability to score goals and set them up, but also his ability to close down opposition defenders and put them under pressure. And that is something Arne Slot wants to see from Alexander Isak. So he wants to get him fit, so that he can play multiple games in a week. But beyond that, he then really wants to see him really up his pressing game. And maybe that's an area that he and Richard Hughes, the sporting director, have looked at as an area they can improve Alexander Isak. So that's going to be an interesting development as he eases his way into the side. How good is he at pressing? How much does he lead that for Liverpool, and can he match kind of an Ousmane Dembele in those terms? That's definitely what Slot is going to demand from him, judging by what we heard today. I also thought Slot was interesting on Liverpool's general performances so far this season. Of course, they are top of the Premier League, aren't they, with 12 points from 12, but there's been some criticism of the performances, and they haven't been absolutely perfect, you would have to admit as much. But he was asked about that and actually said that he felt like Liverpool were way ahead of schedule. And he said, he used the phrase far above what he expected at this point of the season. One of the reasons for that is, he said that the fixture schedule Liverpool had to kick things off was difficult. Of course, Bournemouth here was a tricky game. They've won their other 3 games, haven't they? Of course, they're Newcastle away with all the context around that. Then it was Arsenal at home, a massive game against the title rival, and then Burnley with kind of 11 men behind the ball, making it really tricky in what was a big game for them back in the Premier League as well. So, and he added on top of that with everything that's happened this summer, of course, around Diogo Jota, the fact that the players are still definitely dealing with that. He did not expect, with a much changed squad as well and all the ins and outs that Liverpool have had, to be sitting on 12 points now. So he described himself as pretty delighted with what Liverpool have done so far. He admitted, yes, there are improvements that they need to make when he wants to see them playing better going forward, but he's very, very pleased with what he's seen so far, and he was pretty adamant on that as well, and pretty difficult to disagree with him, really. I don't think I expected Liverpool to pick up as many points as they have, so it has been a very, very strong start in the Premier League, certainly. And in terms of other talking points from the manager, he was asked about the Champions League format and said, he doesn't really know about the importance of finishing top after last season, but he doesn't want to judge it purely on last season. He's going to give it a couple of seasons, and Liverpool are going into this competition aiming to win every fixture, and if they do end up top at the end of that, then they might get a good draw, they might not. But of course, your aim has always got to be to win as many games as possible. He also defended Florian Wirtz in terms of questions about his performances so far. He has been a bit up and down, patchy, but as I did a video which you might want to seek out, talking about Wirtz's performances and doing a deep dive on that, he basically made the point that, look, he's been part of a team that has picked up 12 points and he's definitely played a role in that. So, he knows there's more to come from Florian Wirtz, but he's been very happy with what he's done so far. And he was also really interesting coming in, kind of making the point. There's a question from a Spanish journalist about Liverpool's spending so far, and he kind of made the point that, and he really wanted to emphasise this, that Liverpool raised an awful lot through sales, didn't they, over the summer? So maybe less should be made about the fact that they've spent so much, because they, of course, had to replace so many players. He really wanted to make that point, and he mentioned TalkSport specifically, which I think was quite funny. He's obviously listening to the radio there and hearing things he doesn't like about Liverpool's spending, so he really kind of came out firing on that one. And just want to make a couple of points on what Van Dijk said as well, because he was interesting. Always great to hear from him. And of course, he was asked about Alexander Isak, how he is settling in so far, and he said he's been very good, very eager, which is great to hear, I suppose. Obviously, the quality he has been showing already since the first session, so you get the idea that the players have been really impressed by him so far. And he also was described by Van Dijk as the complete striker, so really tipping him to do very well at Liverpool, though that's no surprise when you see his performances for Newcastle, and of course the fact that he came in for such an incredible fee as well. So hopefully we do get that debut tomorrow, and everything that Van Dijk and the manager have said about him, we'll start to see a bit of that in a Liverpool shirt. So I'm going to wrap it up there anyway. Of course, I think it's a really good challenge, this one, for Liverpool that is coming up tomorrow. I'm really excited to see how they get on in terms of this. Of course, Atletico not coming into this in great form. They're 11th in La Liga. They haven't played so well so far this season, but of course they'll come here, put on a low block, try and make it difficult for Liverpool, and they're very, very capable of that. So it's a really good test early up, but I do think the atmosphere is going to be good, and that always helps Liverpool here at Anfield, doesn't it? And of course there'll be extra excitement with the possibility of seeing Isak. Do we see him for 20 minutes? Does that warm him up for maybe 30 minutes in the Merseyside derby that follows? We'll have to see, but a lot to look forward to, I think, from this game and this week as a whole. So of course I will be here at Anfield tomorrow to give my post-match review. I'm very much looking forward to the game. Let me know your thoughts and all the talking points ahead of that, your score predictions, how you think Liverpool will get on this week, and how much of Isak do you want to see. And of course, if you can like and subscribe, that would also be massively appreciated, and I'll see you guys very soon.